When speaking about socialism, a netizen shared this following video from Ivanka Trump.
Today, I bring a message from my father. America will never be a socialist country. We hope, pray, and work towards the day.
Someone said, "Is socialism really that terrible?" Then he responded himself and said, "It's not terrible, it just leads to massive killing and deaths." Someone said, "Young people in the US, including the children of immigrants, mostly yearn for socialism. However, as they grow up, they are no longer obsessed with socialism, and one of the primary reasons may be that they begin to really understand the relationship between hard work, wealth, and social welfare. And they would also begin to realize that socialism inevitably leads to dictatorship and tyranny." Someone shared this very famous quote from George's Clemenceau and said that, "If you do not vote socialist or communist before you are 20, you have no heart. If you do vote socialist or communist after you are 20, you have no head." Another netizen shared a clip of Donald Trump Jr.'s speech at the Republican National Convention regarding freedom.
In the past, both parties believed in the goodness of America. We agreed on where we wanted to go. We just disagreed on how to get there. This time, the other party is attacking the very principles on which our nation was founded. Freedom of thought, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the rule of law. Thomas Jefferson famously said, "I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man." Our founders believed there was nothing more important than protecting our God-given right to think for ourselves. Now, the left, they're trying to cancel all of those founders. They don't seem to understand this important principle. In order to improve in the future, we must learn from our past, not erase it. So we're not going to tear down monuments and forget the people who built our great nation. Instead, we will learn from our past so we don't repeat any mistakes. And we will work tirelessly to improve the lives of all Americans. Joe Biden and the radical left are now coming for our freedom of speech. They want to bully us into submission. If they get their way, it will no longer be the silent majority. It will be the silenced majority. This has to stop. Freedom of expression used to be a liberal value, at least before the radical left took over. Now the Republican Party is the home of free speech, the place where anyone from any background can speak their mind, and may the best ideas win.
Someone reiterated that the Founding Fathers believed that there is nothing more important than protecting the God-given right of independent thinking. Someone shared that in Yiwu of Eastern China, the local government has already begun to distribute experimental COVID-19 vaccines to people with specific international travel needs. According to a reporter from BBC, hundreds of local residents have lined up outside of the local community hospital. According to Xinhua, the Chinese Communist Party's state media, about 60,000 people have taken the vaccine, and no serious adverse reaction reports have been received. Someone shared that the New York Times published an article targeting the Epoch Times newspaper, claiming that it is anti-China and pro-Trump. Someone commented, "The Epoch Times has always been a strong anti-communism publication, but definitely not anti-China. It has been striving to spread traditional Chinese culture." Blurring the line between anti-communism and anti-China is a tactic that's been used by the Chinese Communist Party for decades, and New York Times appears to be following the Communist Party. Is it now under the CCP's control? Someone said, "If you do not know the truth and facts from history, you may be easily manipulated by others. Any hatred created by lies and distortion, and any attempt to instill this kind of hatred into supporters is basically a tactic that's used by terrorist organizations." For those deeply brainwashed by the CCP, someone shared an idea. The person in the video told a story.
有个人问这个佛祖，你这么厉害，那为什么这么多人受苦呢？那佛祖说了，我无论怎么厉害，有4件事我做不了。那哪4件事呢？一，因果不可改；二，智慧不可知；三，真法不可说；四，无缘不能度。就是无缘的，我跟他说什么，他听不进去。所以天宇虽大，不润无根之草；佛法无边，难度无缘之人。 你看，连佛祖都做不到让蠢货有智慧，所以我们就放弃吧。
In fact, Eastern and Western cultures are sometimes interlinked. This short film also shares the same reality.
Una cosa,
¿Sí?
yo no creo que Dios existe.
¿Por qué dice eso, mi amigo?
Es muy fácil. Al salir a la calle nos damos cuenta de que Dios no existe. Y si no, dígame, si Dios existe, ¿por qué hay tantas personas enfermas? ¿Por qué hay niños abandonados? No, mi amigo, si Dios existiera, no habría sufrimiento, no habría tanto dolor para la humanidad. No puedo entender por qué, si existe un Dios, permite que puedan pasar todas estas cosas.
Bueno,
Que tenga buen
hasta
día.
la próxima.
Hasta luego, señor Luis.
Lo propio. ¿Sabe una cosa? Los barberos no existen.
¿Cómo? ¿Y yo qué soy?
Los barberos no existen. Porque si los barberos existieran, no habría personas con el pelo tan largo como el de este hombre.
Los barberos sí existen. El problema es que esas personas no vienen hacia mí.
Exacto. Ese es el punto. Dios sí existe. Lo que pasa es que las personas no van a Él. Por eso, mi amigo, hay tanta miseria y dolor en el mundo.
In the video is U.S. Republican Senator Ted Cruz, who described how to disintegrate the CCP without fighting a war during an interview he had with the show American Thought Leaders.
Government is the new evil empire. Now listen, nobody in their right mind wants to see a shooting war between the United States and China. You've got two massive militaries, and you would see an enormous number of casualties if we actually got into a shooting war. It's worth pointing out, for the entirety of the Cold War, we didn't get in a shooting war with the Soviet Union, and Reagan understood this the best. We engaged in a systematic, comprehensive effort to shine a light, to use the power of truth, to use economic pressures, to use diplomatic pressures, and to use the incredible power of the American free enterprise system to defeat them and to bankrupt them. You take, for example, the Berlin Wall. A number of years back when I was in Jerusalem, I sat down with Natan Sharansky, the famed Soviet dissident, and he talked to me and told me about how, when he was in the Gulag, that the prisoners in the Soviet Gulag, they would pass from cell to cell notes. Did you see what Reagan said? Did you hear what Reagan said? Evil empire. When Reagan said Marxism-Leninism will end up on the ash heap of history, and all of Washington intelligentsia was aghast that he would say such a thing. When they asked what his strategy was in the Cold War, he said very simple, we win, they lose. And that was, what kind of ignorant Philistine cowboy was this guy? And most importantly, Reagan, when he stood before the Brandenburg Gate, if you go to my office, which is next door to us, the most dominant feature of my office is a gigantic painting. It covers an entire wall of Reagan standing before the Brandenburg Gate. And above him is painted in German in the style of the graffiti on the Berlin Wall, the words, "Tear down this wall." And a lot of people don't know the backstory behind it, which is that 3 times the State Department erased those words from the speech. And 3 times Reagan wrote it back with his own hand. And the State Department argued, Mr. President, you can't say this. You can't say, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. It's too hostile. It's too aggressive. It's too antagonistic. And most importantly, this was their lead argument. It's too unrealistic. Mr. President, we know full well the Berlin Wall will stand forever, and you can't say it because it will never, ever, ever happen. And Reagan, with a twinkle in his eye, said, you don't understand. This is the whole point of the speech.
Someone said the CCP regime is different from the former Soviet Union and Nazi Germany, given it is much more evil. Many Chinese people have been fooled by its lies, but I always believe that everything will gradually change for the better.
Child, we will take you in. Child, we will bring you home. You'll be a flower that sees the spring. Soon a dove flying high